Lights out and welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us to another edition of the F1 Starting Grid. On behalf of Chaz Day, I'm Brock Young, breaking down the Styrian Grand Prix and previewing the Austrian Grand Prix. But before we get to that, please hit that like button, subscribe to stay informed, and leave a comment down below. See if we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. We'd love to hear from you. But Chaz, your first take on that Styrian Grand Prix.
Man, I would say my biggest takeaway right now is it's starting to get pretty hairy for Mercedes as far as and more specifically for Lewis Hamilton and his chances of winning another world championship. Now, I don't think that it's not over by any stretch, but it's definitely starting to turn into a very competitive season, this is probably the season that people have wanted for the last 3 seasons.
Yes.
To be honest.
Including me. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No, I totally agree with you. I thought personally that Mercedes will at least make somewhat of a comeback starting in France. I was wrong, being on circuits, but it is also interesting to see what Red Bull is doing on these circuits, pushing those cars like never before. And we won't get into break down all this, but first let's break down what actually happened over the weekend. We had Max coming in first with a minute 22. Lewis did actually pit on the second to last or last lap there to make the fastest lap. He was 35 seconds behind Max. So behind him, we have Valtteri Bottas. Behind him, in fourth place, is Sergio Perez, only about a second. So Sergio Perez was making a comeback there towards the end. We have Lando Norris in fifth, Carlos Sainz in sixth, seventh is his teammate Charles Leclerc. Lance Stroll in eighth, ninth. We have Fernando Alonso in 10th. We have Yuki Tsunoda finally making a point there for his team AlphaTauri. And number 11, we have Kimi Raikkonen in the Alfa Romeo. And number 12, we have Sebastian Vettel. 13th, Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. And 14th, we have Esteban Ocon, Antonio Giovinazzi in 15th, Mick Schumacher in 16th. 17th, we have Nicholas Latifi. And 18th, we have Nikita Mazepin, and the 2 DNFs. We have George Russell and Pierre Gasly, which we're going to get into in here in just a second. But as far as driver standings right now, we have Max extended his lead, 156 over Lewis Hamilton at 138. Sergio Perez is staying solid in third place with 96 points. Lando Norris in fourth. We have Valtteri Bottas in fifth. Charles Leclerc in sixth. Carlos Sainz in seventh. Pierre Gasly in eighth. Daniel Ricciardo in ninth. Sebastian Vettel is in 10th. Fernando Alonso is in 11th with 19 points. Lance Stroll is in 12th. Esteban Ocon 13th with 12 points. Yuki Tsunoda in 14th. And 15 and 16, we have the teammates Kimi Raikkonen and Antonio Giovinazzi, each with a point. And we have George Russell with the Williams, Mick Schumacher, and Nikita Mazepin with the Haas. And running out the 20th spot is Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. And as far as standings in the constructors, we have Red Bull with 252, 40 points on top of Mercedes with 212. McLaren is in third with 120. Ferrari did make a little bit of a comeback, but they're still in fourth with 108. AlphaTauri with 46 points. In number 6 spot, we have Aston Martin with 44. Alpine with 31 points in the 7th spot. 8th, we have Alfa Romeo with the 2 points. And Williams and Haas still rounding out the 9th and 10th spot with no points whatsoever. And I'll wait to give our predictions when we get our points when we get to the Austrian Grand Prix. But I want to say, what you pointed out earlier, is Mercedes really struggling here, Chaz, or is Red Bull really pushing that car, in your opinion, like they never did before? Or is it a combination, a little bit of both?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I'm not sure 100% on what's going on, but it's hard to say that Mercedes is struggling with. You have every other team trying to get into the top spots, and Mercedes is coming in second and third. So it's hard to say that they're struggling. It's just like I guess comparatively to just kind of compared to what they're capable of doing. It's something completely different. So yeah, I'm not really sure.
Well, honestly, from what I said earlier, from the third and fourth spot, you had Bottas and Sergio Perez fighting it out, and it was close there. It was actually not even a second; it was a half a second between the two. And Sergio Perez, I believe, if he had another lap or two, he would have probably passed up Bottas for that third spot. But 71 laps, 71 laps.
Hmm.
Uh, so Red Bull still. I think to your point there, Chaz, too, is I think Red Bull is actually finding a way to push their cars more than Mercedes, at least right now.
Hmm.
And it's remained to see. We got one more race at the Red Bull Ring, the Austrian Grand Prix, but we're going to go to a home race for Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone, and I think that's a good opportunity for Mercedes to make a comeback right there. And because Mercedes is really strong, and so is Red Bull for the matter. Because last year they had two races at Silverstone, but one of them is Lewis Hamilton was on his last lap there, and his tire blew out, and he kept on going, and
Hmm.
Max Verstappen was right behind him, and he was gaining spots, until, or gaining seconds on Lewis Hamilton until Lewis Hamilton finally finished in the first spot by, limping over the finish line over at Silverstone. Um, it's coming down to, from what I'm looking at, tire strategy.
Yeah, it really is. No, it really has been. I would say in the last few races, it's really been coming down to tire strategy a lot more than usual. I mean, it's Formula One, so tires are always a factor to be concerned about. But tire strategies has really been determining the outcome of the race more than we've seen in recent years. So it's pretty cool to watch.
Um, but I still can't get over how impressive. Now, for me, the one and two spot was boring
Hmm.
because it was stayed the same, and there was no overtake, no lead change, for a while there. But in fact, Max did lead for 71 laps, but
Right,
one car race. So for that,
right.
in fact, it was boring. But at least for the midfield, it was kind of exciting there because you had the two Ferraris, Carlos and his teammate Charles Leclerc, which Charles Leclerc made the driver of the day,
Hmm.
coming up from outside the top 10 all the way to seventh, and he was just moving that Ferrari. Big improvement from France.
Yeah.
They found a way. But your thoughts on that, Chaz?
On on on
On
what specifically?
on the Ferrari making a big leap over France.
Just like an improvement, like just how
Yeah.
they've improved. Yeah, I would say, I mean, we've talked about this for a few weeks now. Ferrari has been improving. Um, they've been making gradual steps each race to make steps forward, but um, I don't know. Ferrari's been really tricky this year because they'll have moments of that are really bright spots where it'll look like they're back into the runnings of being one of the top teams. We can talk about the what was that? Was that the Spanish Grand Prix?
Yes.
Um, where Leclerc just comes out of nowhere. And we're just like, okay, is Ferrari back? Azerbaijan wasn't a bad week for Ferrari either. It just kind of seemed like they were coming back. And then once it comes to race day, though, you kind of don't know what to expect from them. So I think they're having the same challenges that they've been having for the last few years, which is really just inconsistency.
One thing I did notice, and it was back all the way to France, and they had it at the streets of Baku, but starting in France, they removed the green mission window on the side of the car.
Hmm.
Finally, I just noticed that.
I never noticed that, or I didn't notice it.
It was I had to look it back because I noticed it this weekend. It's like it's not there, so I had to go back and Google the French Grand Prix, and I found out it wasn't there. So
Hmm. No, that is interesting. Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe that's affecting some of their funding. I'm not really sure, but and maybe that's having an impact on the car. But like I was said, I think the biggest impact or the biggest issue with what Ferrari has going on is really just the lack of consistency, and because all the other teams have continued to get better, their lack of consistency is just impacting them more now.
hmm. um, the one person that actually looked good over the weekend too is until he had a DNF was, and this is wish Mike was here to talk about him, is George Russell. He
Ugh,
was
ugh, I know.
eighth
I was
eighth
thinking about
spot.
Mike.
He was an eighth spot before the DNF, and it wasn't really his fault. It was just issues with his car again. Um, I mean, it seems like every time he's get into that eighth or ninth spot, something happens when he either wrecks out or something happens to his car or something like that. Um,
Yeah, you hate to see it. You really do hate to see it because he's such a bright spot for that Williams team. Like he is, um, he's a fast young driver. So, Williams would love to in these, especially in these transitional years where they're bad and they know that they're bad, right? Everybody knows that they're bad. So they would love to capitalize in these transitional years on a bright, young, talented driver who could at least maybe get them into the points, right?
right.
But their car is struggling so much that they can't even capitalize on the talent that's George Russell. So, yeah, you hate to see it.
Um, totally hate to see it, but he's making progress though.
Yeah,
He's
I would say
making
so.
progress, and in fact, I think he's going to have a little pull on my on my picks this weekend. Who knows?
Yeah, too
Um,
too bad the engineering's not, but
um, and one of my boys this weekend also, crapped out. One of the first rounds is or first laps is Pierre Gasly DNFing
yeah,
tire. And that's unfortunate because he was also going strong as well. Um, but Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, got into points though.
he did. Yuki just squeezed into there, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did. Um, yeah, Lando coming in fifth. What do you think about Lando coming in fifth there? I know you had him on the podium though.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a disappointing result for McLaren. I mean, we're talking about finishing behind two Mercedes and two Red Bulls,
Yeah,
right? Like these are the teams that are leading the championship. So for McLaren, coming in fifth is not a disappointing result at all, especially when that means that you came ahead of Ferrari
right.
and Renault, if you can even count them anymore.
Um,
What am I talking about? Renault? That's not what I meant. Ferrari. You came ahead of Ferrari.
yeah,
That's their real competition.
yeah. And he's the one that's keeping McLaren ahead of Ferrari right now too, in the constructors by 8 points right now.
Yeah, I mean, in Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, I think the bigger story, if you're talking about McLaren at all, the biggest story to me is why is Daniel Ricciardo performing so poorly?
Mm. What do you think is
Because
that?
huh?
What do you think is that?
It's hard to say. I mean, he's got the same car, presumably, as Lando Norris, and presumably when he came in, to McLaren, he was their number one driver. I mean, you could kind of argue, whether he was or wasn't their number one driver, but and he was coming off of being, he still had that halo of being, Daniel Ricciardo, podium driving racer. So performing so much worse than Norris really is a little surprising. I don't know. What do you think about where Ricardo is right now and what's going on with him?
It's actually, to me, it's a little depressing. I know he's trying to find that car and that pace right now. In fact, there's a story um, on Formula One that it he was quoted by saying is it's one of those days I really did not love the sport. So, and he said we were ahead of Carlos Sainz in the same strategy, and he finished sixth. I think it was us. We could have done fifth or sixth place, a team as a or team again as a team. Uh, when it was a little low, it was really low. This is one of those days I really did not love the sport. So he was really struggling in Red Bull, the Red Bull ring, and to be honest, they have to go at it again. So it's interesting to see what they're going to be, what improvements they're going to be doing, trying to get Ricardo down in or up into the top 10. And it just, to me, I don't know. I just, it seems a little disappointing. I mean, he had such high hopes going into McLaren, but at the same time, going from Red Bull, only 2 years at Renault, and we saw Drive Survive that the team principal at the time with Renault was very upset that Daniel Ricciardo was moving on to McLaren. But honestly, that
That situation over there is so tough that
yeah,
yeah, tough. I could use another T word, toxic, but
yeah,
yeah, definitely understand why he found his way out of there. But yeah, it's just it is hard to watch. He's such a likable guy.
he is. But I thought he was finding more success with Renault.
Uh, I think so. I think he was. Well, I don't know. I think it's hard to say because success is really measured against expectations, right? And so Renault was expecting to have a better season and to constantly be moving up, up, and up. When he moved to Renault, they had just solidly moved into the fourth place spot in the constructors championship, and they actually took a step backwards or stayed the same. I'm trying to think about where they ended up last season, or a couple seasons ago, but they didn't really make strides forward. They just kind of struggled to maintain, really. So, I mean, I guess it wasn't. It wasn't. I will say him personally. He personally wasn't struggling as much as he's struggling now, but he also wasn't performing particularly well.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on here to another story before we go into the Austrian Grand Prix, and as we're going back up to Mercedes here, where and it's a headline once again from Formula One that says Wolff admits the Styrian Grand Prix was the first race in 8 years where Mercedes lacked pace to fight for victory. Team principal Toto Wolff admitted that Max Verstappen's Styrian Grand Prix victory for his team for the first time in the turbo higher area had no weapons in our armory to try and challenge for the win after Red Bull comfortably outpaced the Silver Arrows in the Red Bull ring. And Toto Wolff continued, and he quote, he says, "It's not a bad result, but it was tough, and it was been in the, it's, but it wasn't tough. It was been in the first race in 8 years where we're just lacking the pace." And your thoughts on that, Chaz?
Um, I mean, you look at the numbers and you look at where we came. Um, you know how far we came behind Verstappen. It's a little concerning, I would say. Um, yeah, it's a little concerning. What do you feel about it as a non Mercedes fan but a Formula One fan? Um,
I'm just a man.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, one hand, I like the competition. I
Hmm.
like how you see where Red Bull is taking um, two Mercedes in a the hybrid era, as they were pointed out there, in the car that has been Mercedes been dominant for the past 7 years. On the flip side, I'm looking at this and just thinking that once again, the season's not over with, and we're gonna get to our Twitter question here in a minute. How y'all think the championship will boil down at the end of the season? However, this also to me plays into aspect of how is this going to play for 2022, and it goes beyond drivers. It goes beyond Lewis Hamilton, Bottas, if they will find a seat at Mercedes, but how the power unit itself will be played into 2022. I know I'm making probably too much of this, making a mountain out of a molehill, but I just can't get over how this is stacking up right now. I mean, it seems like week after week after week after week, Red Bull is getting stronger to me.
Yeah.
And how is all that's going to play out towards the end of the year? Red Bull will have the momentum going into 2022. That's how I see it. I don't know if you see something different there, Chaz.
You can see it in the results. I mean, Red Bull is getting stronger. I think it's hard to. I mean, it's really hard to judge constructors when the drivers have such different results too.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the ways that you can kind of judge, the great drivers from the not so great drivers just by their consistency. So, I mean, you can look at the top three teams and you see exactly that. You see that split where it makes it hard for you to judge whether the constructor is doing well or individual drivers are. And for that reason, it's hard to judge where constructors are as a whole because you have Hamilton and then you have Bottas, right? And there's such a big drop off between those two drivers in performance. Not ability, not capability, not all that stuff, but just performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Verstappen, um, and then you have uh, um, uh, Perez, and there isn't a massive drop off, but there's still a drop off in performance. He's still not. It's still not 1-2. You know what I mean? And then you have Norris, and then you have Ricardo, and again a big drop off between those drivers. So you have two teams that seemingly have drivers that are driving the same car that are getting drastically different performance, and it's kind of like one of those like um, you know they're kind of notched, and you might get any random assortment of these notches on any given week with those three teams. So, is Red Bull performing really well? Yes, I would say yes for sure. Are they performing better than Mercedes? I would say Verstappen is
Yeah, at least for the time being.
for the time being.
Now, this is also making news right here, and once again, this is I feel like beating a dead horse with this topic right now, but it did make news over the weekend, and where Lewis Hamilton pretty much addressed the issue with George Russell joining Mercedes. He said, "Bottas is my teammate, not Russell." Um, I don't know if I know Lewis, I know Bottas, probably to the point where they're at least Lewis is focused on the race. I don't know about Bottas. Bottas is I don't think he's right now all there. But hate to say it about the guy, but even though he finished third, I think this is one of his best finishes. But I feel like he's just not really competing. I mean, he was 46 seconds behind Max. If it wasn't for Lewis pitting for the second time right there, Lewis would probably have been up there with Max, and that would have been a pretty big gap between Lewis and Bottas for second and third. But say this, Lewis, I think his head is in the game, but he's also being questioned about that second seat at Mercedes between Bottas and Russell. And where does that put an effect of someone like Toto Wolff, who's actually trying to run the team, and he's also been posed with the same question. I guarantee you, every team principal is always on the mind. And I'm not just this year, but also next year as well, and the year after, and the year after. So that's always on their mind. But being hounded about it by in the press and stuff like that, um, and that's where Hamilton finally had to fess up. And he loves Botas as a teammate. Botas, and we talked about this too several times over. Botas is a great number two for him.
Hmm.
Probably not right this minute. He's not performing as well as he did in the past, but Botas is a great number two, and I feel George Russell, when he wants that Mercedes seat, but he also wants to win championships. I don't know if that will play. If, let's say, for instance, Lewis does come back in 2022, Russell gets that spot in 2022. So is Hamilton and Russell in that spot. Can it safely say that it's going to be a repeat of 2016, where you have two top A personalities wanting that championship in that situation, Chaz? Or it's just
Hopefully, right? Like, I mean,
hopefully.
yeah, it's tough because it's hard when results are involved, because results make it hard to truly and accurately assess performance, right? And there's obviously a difference between results and performance.
Hmm.
And so, because you've had results where both, I mean, you could take this weekend as a great example. You just kind of ran through the numbers and how far he was off of championship pace, um, but he came in third, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at the results of the race, you'll be like, well, how much better do you want him to be? I mean, we're talking about Verstappen, who will go down as one of the greats, and Hamilton, who is already one of the greats. Those are the only two people on the field that were ahead of him. That's the results,
Yeah.
right? However, his performance wasn't really competitive with them where it should have been, right? And so I guess it comes down to like, okay, what are you actually asking of him? Are you asking him to win races? Are you asking him to come higher than third? Are you asking him to come in second? So basically, are you asking him then to beat Verstappen and Hamilton every week, which is not really a possibility for him and his skill set? Or are you asking for it to look different? So, like, are you expecting his performance to, uh, how he's driving to be different? And I guess that those are two different things. I don't know. It's tough because he's also in his 30s now too. So,
Yeah.
so when it comes to like upside, if you could find another driver who could also come in third place, right, behind Verstappen and Hamilton, which is basically all you could ask from any driver, right? Like, you're not going to ask any driver to do more than come in third place behind Hamilton and Verstappen, right?
Yeah.
No one would ask that. So if you could find a younger driver who could do the same thing, it's worth the risk, because then at least you have the upside.
And to be honest, he did hold back Perez
Yeah, he did hold back Perez.
this go around. And those four drivers, the two teams, Red Bull and Mercedes teams, um, did finish at 71 laps, while everyone else was at least lap once, including Lando Norris.
Hmm.
Because I don't have the time here, they just had plus one lap. And to go down here, it was both Nicholas Latifi and Nikita Mazepin was lapped three times during that race. Mick was lapped twice, and everyone else was lapped once.
Yeah, Haas is struggling.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Haas is struggling. Williams is struggling. I mean, what's new?
Well, let's talk about this right quick. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, ever since he got his 3-year extension, he hasn't. I guess he's not really strong on the circuits, I guess. But Esteban Ocon finished at 14th once again, second 14th place in a row.
Hmm.
While Fernando Alonso is finishing points, at least in ninth and 10th place. Um, so this is right there a little disappointing for Alpine and Ocon himself for not, getting the best out of that car like he used to. He's been the beginning part of the season. He was finishing on top of Alonso.
Yeah.
Now it seems almost like opposite.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like it's one of those situations where just like consistency wins over time, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I don't know what that is, why or inconsistency is felt more over time because I don't know exactly what that is. Um, but yeah, Ocon seems to be struggling. He was such a it's tough too because um, he was such a bright spot for like in the last few years. He'd been such a bright spot for Racing Point. So
And I don't know if I should save this for a Twitter question because I was going to save this for after the Austrian Grand Prix, see how he finishes. Um, after Baku, the streets of Baku, everyone started praising that Vettel is back.
hmm,
Vettel is back.
mhm.
But with finishing in 10th in France and now 12th in the Styrian Grand Prix, um, I'll wait to ask this question next week after we see him in the Austrian Grand Prix and see how he finishes there. I mean, is that magic still there or is it gone for Sebastian Vettel? So I'm gonna wait till we see him in that role. Um, in the meantime, speaking about the Austrian Grand Prix, um, it is once again at the Red Bull Ring. So we have two races back to back at the same track, which is nice to see. But yet, I mean, it's glad to see a race being filled like it is.
Hmm.
Still the 23 race calendar. Um, but Chaz, you and Mike were goose eggs over the weekend, so y'all stay consistent at 228 and 213, and um, I got first and second right. I did not get third or even the wild card pick right, so I moved up roughly about 40 points. So I went up to 188. So y'all stayed at Mike's at 228, you at 213, and I'm at now 188
Hmm.
for the standings. Um, and to be honest, I did not get the over under on Mazepin. It's kind of hard, keeping track of that. So I don't know if you should be doing that from now on, but we'll see. Maybe we could do an over under of something we could actually catch. I don't know. Um, but Mike's picks, let's go. Mike's picks is he has Max finishing first, then Lewis, then Sergio. Then of course his extra wild card pick is George Russell will get into Q3 in qualifying. Um, my picks, I've been kind of battling this back and forth. I don't want to be like the same as Mike, but I was hoping to have Max, Lewis, and Sergio. But I'm going to go with Max, Lewis, and I think Lando will probably find a way into that third spot in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. And my wild card pick is Pierre Gasly will finish in the top 6. So what do you have, my man?
So I've got Lewis Max Botas for the podium, and then for a wild card, I'm going to say that Leclerc will beat Norris.
Hmm. I'll mess up my podium, but it'll be interesting to see. I'd be kind of glad to see that as a Ferrari fan myself. Um, which let's take a look at this right quick. I don't think Charles Leclerc was too far off the pace of Norris this past weekend, so that could be a very good possibility.
He wasn't too far off the pace. Yeah, and Leclerc is just one of those. I mean, there's a lot of drivers who have been having very good seasons very quietly.
Yes.
Um, and so I think Leclerc is one of those people who has been outperforming his car every single week. Now, Sainz did finish ahead of him this past week, which is great for Ferrari, to be honest. Um, but from a long term consistency standpoint, Leclerc has been more consistent, and he's had a very quiet, very consistent performing season, in my opinion, relative to what he's had to work with in his car.
Well, just to let you know that this past weekend, Norris, for qualifying wise, and this is very placed in the key in the race, qualifying, Lando was in fourth, Leclerc was in seventh, and Sainz was in 12th
Mm,
for qualifying.
yeah, yeah. So it's very competitive in that midfield. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting what's going on
I'd
there.
love to see. Interesting story, actually, speaking about Austria too. Interesting story coming out of there where possibility of both Audi and Porsche joining Formula One yet again. And
Yes.
now this has been rumored for so many years, so many times before. Then the Ferrari group, which actually owns both Audi and Porsche, have dropped their bid to be in Formula One. So, but we'll see about this because for the 2025 meeting, that's hopefully when both Audi and Porsche will be able to join Formula One. Uh, People at the meeting, including those two, you had Mercedes, you had Ferrari, you had Renault, you had Red Bull powertrain units, which will be the power units supplier for Red Bull, and you had the FIA as well as members of Formula One as well. And the topics of discussion will be about the 2025 engine, which is environmental sustainability, fuel sustainability, fully sustainable fuel, creating a powerful and emotional power unit, significant cost reduction, which is very key going into the new cost cap era, and attractiveness to new power unit manufacturers, which, once again, Porsche and Audi hopefully will be one of them. But the main objective for Volkswagen Group here, for them to be part of Formula One now, is that fully sustainable fuel. That's key because they're still going to, by 2025, they're still going to be using combustible engines, um, but they want to be more environmental friendly. So that's very key for Volkswagen to get back into Formula One. Your first takes on that, Chaz?
I'm excited about it. I'm a very big fan of the Volkswagen Group manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very big fan. I've been a an owner of Volkswagen Group cars, and my dream cars are Volkswagen Group cars. So I'm a very big fan of Audi and Porsche. So I hope that they get involved. It'd be really fun for the sport. It's always good um, for racing and sport in general when Germany's involved. And so adding uh, another couple of teams with the German presence and engineering history would be fun. I think it's also kind of preluding, as you kind of alluded to a little bit, it's preluding some of the changes that we're gonna see coming in the next few years from Formula One in general. So I think everyone's pretty excited because Mercedes has dominated this hybrid era so much that seeing a new era uh, of changes to what might be required from the FIA. It also means that there could be another team that takes over as far as performance wise. So um, all of these changes are welcome changes as a fan of Formula One.
Absolutely, I love to see this. I want to. We talked about this about a few months ago of manufacturers who we would like to see back in
Hmm.
Formula One. My pick was Audi,
Hmm.
and this is a very good possibility for them to get in there. Um, I could almost see like a similar car like the old Saba car back a few years ago when it was just dark gray,
Yeah.
and that's the color of like the S models off of Audi, and that's what I want to see. I want to see that so bad. Um, but it will take them so not money, yes, but it will take them quite a bit for them to get into Formula One, and that's one of the steps right there is that sustainable fuel be more environmental friendly for them. Um, I think this is a good way for them to be part of it. I want to be said before. I want them to be part of it.
Hmm.
It's it's always hard to see new manufacturers get into Formula One. Case in point, Mercedes had a big, it took them a while to find their footing. I mean, even with Michael Schumacher in that seat for a few years, didn't really help
Hmm.
until something like we talked about him too. Um, oh my God, his name escapes me right now, but he just passed away. Niki Lauda.
Mm. Yep.
His influence on Mercedes, Toto Wolff's influence on Mercedes. It was just not those guys, but a whole handful influence from guys, including Lewis Hamilton, to make that car great. But it took them years to have that happen.
Yeah.
Uh, so in order for Porsche, either Porsche, Audi, or even both of them, that will be a very significant step for them to get. In fact, you know what? I was debating what Twitter question we're going to have this week. I was going to want to make it. We'll probably discuss this a little more into depth next week. Is and it's kind of boring. I'm sorry, but would would the Volkswagen Group enter Formula One? And I want to get
Mm.
y'all. So
Okay. Cool.
I want to see that. So that's a good transition into our next topic, which is our Twitter question. And um, as we discussed earlier about how tight the race is right now and how Red Bull is just finding their footing, the Twitter question is how will the championships go at the end of the season? You had the choice of either Red Bull winning it both, Mercedes winning it both, but 60% of you believe it will be split down the middle. 30% believes that Red Bull will win it, and 10% will believe Mercedes will win it both. So, with that information there, Chaz, your take on it.
Yeah. I mean, if history is an indicator, then I would say bet on Mercedes. Um, they've struggled in the beginning of seasons before, and they've won every time in this hybrid era.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think that they are slacking on innovation. I don't think that they're slacking on attention to detail. Um, even I mean they are constantly pushing forward and trying to make things better, even down to um, I remember even like last season when they made that innovation with the steering wheel um,
Yeah.
that everybody tried to challenge, but
Including
um,
Red Bull.
especially Red Bull.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I think with that being said, it's I mean, and that was a season that they were winning, right, and they were dominating. They're pushing for innovation. So especially with their backs against the wall, I'm not going to bet against Mercedes. I think that they'll figure it out, and I also know that Bottas, as much as he's struggled, in my opinion, that he's pushing.
Yeah.
And so a second and third, finish for this week is still very solid for them. It's still better than all in all. It's a better result for than what Red Bull had. So I'll take it, and I think that Mercedes is going to pull it out on both fronts, and I think the same for Lewis. I think Lewis is gonna pull out the world championship, and this will be one of the toughest that he's had to pull out.
Um, to that point too is, yeah, at least this race, Bottas was able to help Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes get in points, unlike, say, Imola, where he
Hmm.
was fighting George Russell for ninth place
Hmm.
before the wreck. So to that point, yeah, I think. But so far, Bottas couldn't get higher than third. But as you pointed out earlier, with someone like Max or, Lewis at the head right there, you just can't really. I mean, it's very hard for them to pass them up. If they're strong. Now they would have to like crash out or some mechanical failures in order for you to pass them, just like in Azerbaijan. But
Yeah,
other than that, it's pretty much impossible, to pass those two on a strong straight like that, or any course for that matter. Um,
agreed.
but also, I heard this as well that this year, 2021, this is the most points Lewis Hamilton has gotten uh, for a start of the season. I
Mm.
heard this. I heard this a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
I think going into Azerbaijan, that where this is the most points Lewis Hamilton has scored at the beginning part of the season. So far, normally he starts, pretty low. I'm not low, but I mean he starts, maybe second, third every race. Then he starts building up, building up, and building up. And by after the summer break, that's where you see like, he's 1, 2, 3 races away from winning the championship. So roughly about this time right now, or right before this time, is where he starts making his move in that championship race. So to see Red Bull this strong right now, it'll be interesting to see how this season's going to end. I love it. I love it. But
Yeah, and I didn't know that fact, but I definitely felt it because I mean we've been at this point before where at the beginning of the season it feels competitive, and then we come out of the summer break and we're like, oh, was this even a season at all? What is it ever competitive at all? But it's really just um, Mercedes. Mercedes is consistent. If there's anything they are consistent about, and it's getting better.
and that moves us on to our last discussion of the day. We've been discussing quite a bit of changes to tracks, including last week we discussed the Yasamarina, track, and now there's going to be some changes to the Russian Grand Prix, not necessarily to Sochi, because there's no changes to Sochi, but they're going to be changing it from Sochi to outside of St. Petersburg for 2023 at the Igora Drive. It is I don't know, kind of reminds me a little bit of Sochi's track, but we have to wait and see. Um, but your take on this, Chaz?
I think it's interesting. I'm not as knowledgeable about tracks as you are, but I do think that I do think it's interesting. Like, what's the kind of general consensus, or what are fans saying about it?
Well, from what I understand, like on Twitter and such, they're really enjoying this. I think this overall is a good switch.
Hmm.
It anything to make the sport better, I'm all for.
Hmm.
And I know people, and in the beginning, I enjoyed Sochi because I mean it was right there on the beach. It was just a resort town, and they're trying to make the best of that facility from the Winter Olympics that they
Right,
had.
right.
So I was really excited to see that. But after years and years of complaining, it's like it's um, not much overtaking, kind of boring race, that sort of thing. Probably even more boring than the Abu Dhabi race, which is really boring.
Right.
But something to spice things up, to make us talk, just like having this race in Miami, the changes to Yas Marina. Um, just making us talk, and I'm getting real excited about this.
Hmm.
A new track, and this is a brand new track too. I think it was finished in 2019.
I never really understand that. I don't understand why. Yeah, I get that that's like a newer track, and which is cool. It's always fun. I don't understand, the idea of newer tracks versus the existing ones. I mean, is the goal to just do something new? I mean, it's weird to. There's enough tracks in the world that we could just use the ones we already have.
Yeah, in fact, there's one in Moscow that's already FIA grade.
Hmm.
I don't know why they needed to build another one there, but
The
not
one
only
in Vietnam never got. I mean, that's a newer track too, but it never got used, and it isn't looking like it will be in the near future.
no, it doesn't look like that either. I think there's more talk of going to South Africa than going to Vietnam now.
Yeah.
But it's DTM actually is going to use this as well, not just Formula One. And it's going to be four. The original plan was 4.068 kilometers long, 15 turns, but they actually extended it to roughly about 5.7 kilometers long,
Hmm.
which is
I know
really
a lot of it usually has to do with the schedule as well.
yeah, and that's just it. Sochi is a resort town on the south end of Russia, which is a beach town.
Hmm.
So having it in October was almost ideal. Now they're moving north of an hour north of St. Petersburg to Igora, which is actually a ski resort town.
Hmm.
So they most likely would have to change the schedule for this as well, and have this more around the summertime.
Yeah.
And the neat thing is,
I mean, they could have a heated track.
they could have a heated track too, but it's also being up north like that. It also rains so much as well.
That's a good point.
So we might have seen more rain races over there too. So I would love to see that wet races over there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be fun. I think I'm all for it. I'm all for, like you said, I'm all for looking for ways to make races more fun and more interesting. And I'm glad that they're trying things as opposed to just resting on their laurels. And um,
Mm-hmm.
they're actively trying to make the sport more interesting to draw more viewers in. I love that.
It'll be interesting if they make any more choices before the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see.
Because
Especially ahead of this absolutely ridiculous season we got coming up.
well, there's rumored that the Brazilian Grand Prix might be taken off the calendar. Deal with what's going on over there, and other races too, including Mexico. Um,
Oh man, that messes up
so
the whole Western circuit.
yeah, but honestly, we did not get into this right now, but there's news that Turkey is back on,
Hmm.
and they're going to take place. They're going to replace the Singapore Grand Prix.
Oh, okay, I did see that.
So that's actually big news right there. So it's very nice to see that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean Turkey's great. I did like Singapore, but
oh, I love Singapore. That's one
yeah,
of my. We had the discussion several times over. It's like that's the very first race I get to see and fall in love with Formula One after watching, certain movies about Formula One. Um, so when it was canceled, it was just, broke my heart. But um, hopefully we'll see that on the calendar next year.
yeah. No, I wish it didn't have to be at the expense of Singapore, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's nice to see Turkey again.
yeah, absolutely. Um, you're only like 15 points away from him in the race.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll pass them this season or this weekend.
That'll be interesting to see. Even with George Russell performing pretty good.
I think I'll pass him this weekend. What did he send in his
Yeah,
predictions?
yeah, he did.
Okay.
It was Max, Lewis, and Sergio, and his extra wild card pick is George Russell will get into Q3 in qualifying, at which he was very close this past weekend, so he actually might do
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Well, he's got basically the opposite podium of me, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
that's good. Nice competition there
Yeah, for now.
for now. But that would do it for us. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter as well as Facebook at Former Racing. Check out on our Twitter poll as well. Will the Volkswagen Group be a part of Formula One coming up here in the next few years? Other than that, I think we'll bid you adieu, and we'll see you next time right here on the F1 Starting Grid.
Bye, guys.